Hello, my name is Christina Jimenez.
And I'm Josh Floyd.
And today we are going to be discussing weekend possession over 100 miles. So because of the complexity of a standard possession order, we have decided to kind of take these different types of visitations and parcel them out, break them up into several different videos, because if we tried to cover all of this in one video, I think it would go for about 45 minutes to an hour, and it may not be the information that you all need. And so we're hoping by breaking this down into several different videos, it will help you to only have to listen to the things that are going to be relevant to your particular situation. So with that being said, weekend possession over 100 miles. So typically when you're looking at a standard possession order, it will have two different sections. So it'll say within 100 miles and over 100 miles, right? So obviously within 100 miles means that the parents are living within 100 miles from each other, right? Over 100 miles, they're living more than 100 miles away from one another, okay? So it's established by the primary residence of the child, which is the person who has the exclusive right to designate the residence, and then the possessory conservator would be more than 100 miles away from that residence. So Floyd, why don't you explain the managing a possessory and kind of how we're using that today?
Yeah, so for the purposes of this video and probably all of our subsequent possession schedule videos, we'll be referring to a managing conservator as the party that has the exclusive right to designate the primary residence, and the possessory conservator is the person that exercises visitation. Although they could be appointed joint managing conservators, etc., but for the purposes of today, that's the way we're going to refer to them.
Perfect. All righty. So if you watched the previous video that we've posted on the standard possession order, we really did take some time to go through and explain first, third, and fifth weekends and Thursdays and things of that nature. We're going to go ahead and rehash a lot of that today, because when a possessory conservator resides more than 100 miles away from the primary conservator, you get to make an election. And Floyd, what is that election?
You can elect to only have one weekend of possession rather than first, third, and fifth weekends. And you can designate that weekend with 14 days notice.
Okay, and so let's say, hypothetically speaking, that we have two parents and they are living in the same county at the time of divorce, and then the possessory conservator decides that he is going to move away 6 months after the divorce is final. When does he have to make that designation?
Within the first 90 days of beginning to reside more than 100 miles apart. He has to notify the managing conservator that he wants to exercise the alternate weekend possession. The default remains at first, third, and fifth if he does not give notice. If he gives notice, then he goes to the alternate.
Perfect. So I have had that happen on a lot of my different cases, well, not a lot, but a few, where, the possessory conservator moves, more than 100 miles away, and then the managing conservator calls me and says, hey, well, he moved, and I keep referencing father, but in this particular case, father moves more than 100 miles away, and so and now he's trying to exercise his first, third, and fifth weekends, and I'm not okay with that. I only want him to have to take the child one weekend per month, because I just don't want the child on the road that often, or it's just not fair, whatever excuse or reason that they may try to give us. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on who I'm representing, that's not the managing conservator's say so, right? That managing conservator has to go with whatever the possessory conservator says. And if they want to continue to travel on the first, third, and fifth weekends, then that's what's going to happen, right? So I guess Floyd, let's go through the calendar real quick and kind of explain first, third, and fifth weekends of each month. So for the purposes of this exercise, we have printed out the Lewisville ISD academic calendar 2020 to 2021. Floyd, what calendar should they be using?
They should be using the school district calendar for where the child resides.
Very good. So let us explain first, third, and fifth weekends of the month. And I think we decided October was probably the best week to use.
October is the best month to use, yes.
Yeah, you know what I meant. Continue. So explain first, third, and fifth weekends, Mr. Floyd.
Got it. So first, third, and fifth weekends, which I guess we just called it first, third, and fifth weekends. It's commonly referred to as that, but really what it is first, third, and fifth Fridays. And so when we go through the calendar, we're going to be counting the Fridays. So here in October, October 2nd would be the first Friday. October 9th would be the second, the 16th, 3rd, 23rd, 4th, and then the 30th. October 30th would be the fifth weekend. And so that's how you determine which Friday. So it's often referred to as first, third, and fifth weekends, but it means first, third, and fifth Fridays.
Okay. So Floyd, talk to me about the 6th of November. What happens then?
That's the first weekend. So that does throw a lot of people off because most people presume under the standard possession order, it alternates weekends, right? And that's not the case for about 3 to 4 months out of the year because the possessory conservator does get first, third, and fifth. So in this case, he would get the 2nd, the 16th, the 30th, which is the fifth weekend, but then he would get the very next weekend, November 6th, because that's the first weekend.
Very good. So if possessory conservator moves more than 100 miles away, they can continue to exercise all of these first, third, and fifth weekends if that is what they choose to do, okay? So if they decide that for whatever reason it is not going to be beneficial to them, or perhaps they can't take off of work to travel to pick up the kiddo, or they don't want the kiddo on the highway that long, whatever the case may be, then they also have the ability to make an election 14 days advance written notice of their intent to choose one weekend per month. Okay, so going back to this calendar, most of the time what most parents will do that choose to exercise one weekend per month is they will find the student holidays throughout the year, and they will use that to extend their weekend possession. So holidays will always extend a weekend period of possession. And so if the child is off of school on Friday, so let's go here and let us look at Friday, April the 2nd. So if they're off school on Friday, then you could actually begin your weekend on Thursday at 6 p.m. Okay, and let's just say hypothetically that Monday was not a holiday, you would return Sunday at 6 p.m. However, if the kiddos are off of school on Monday, then you would also have the ability to pick up the children on Friday, assuming Friday was not a holiday, Friday at 6, and then keep the children all the way until Monday at 6 p.m. Okay, so what I typically do is I encourage my clients, and it depends, right, on how far away you guys are living from one another. But I encourage my clients to pull up the school calendar, and if you're choosing one weekend per month, go ahead and go through for the entire school year and elect, if possible, every single weekend that you're going to exercise, right? So that way everybody's on notice, your kiddo's on notice, they know when they're going to be able to see the other parent, and you can plan for travel, so on and so forth. And you can choose, if possible, all of these weekends that have these holidays that trail. Floyd, thoughts on that?
I concur.
Great thought, Floyd. So hypothetically speaking, here in February, we would probably want to choose the weekend of the 12th through the 15th. April, for sure, we'd want the 2nd through the 5th, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so just about every month during the school year has an extended weekend.
Correct. Now, the one thing that you guys have to be careful about, and that's going to be another video that we're going to talk about, is holidays, right? So you cannot elect a weekend that would be considered, spring break that would go to the other parent, or Mother's Day that would go to the other parent. You can't choose any Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of that. Your weekend that you designate cannot interfere with holiday possession for the other side. The other thing that a lot of my clients will do is, if it is, let's just say hypothetically November, and it happens to be their Thanksgiving holiday, they won't exercise a weekend in November because they're going to have that full week, and they'll just use that time in lieu of that. Okay, so Floyd, let's talk about exchanges and how that's going to impact this move.
Okay, so I guess it's different for each order, so it's really kind of hard to say. But I will say because of this, the exchange location is very important whenever you're working this out. Generally speaking, you will have one party picking up from the other party's residence, the possessory conservator picking up from managing, and then you will either have the managing picking up from the possessory, or the possessory returning to managing. So that would obviously play a big impact on the amount of weekends the possessory conservator could exercise in this situation. But if you've got an agreement where you're meeting halfway, right? If the possessory conservator moves 200 miles, the managing conservator still has to meet halfway. So.
Yeah, and so, I will say that typically in the default language in a lot of these standard possession orders, it states that the possessory conservator is going to pick up and drop off, right? And then there's an additional provision that says that if the managing, or the possessory and the managing, are living in the same county, and then the managing conservator moves outside of that county, then effective on the date that they move, then possessory would pick up at the beginning, managing would pick up at the end, right? But I have, and so that's typically going to be your default language that you're going to see. I have had some, divorce decrees that have come through my office where they have agreed that they're going to exchange at the Denton County Sheriff's Department, right? And then the managing conservator comes in and says, well, I've decided that I want to move to Houston. Is he going to come to Houston and have to pick up the kid at the Sheriff's Department there? And the unfortunate response is no. You are still going to have to drive every first, third, and fifth weekends to deliver the kiddo to Denton County Sheriff's Department, even though you're living in Houston. So like Floyd said, always really be cognizant of that. If you think there's even the slightest chance that you might be relocating, or the other side may be relocating, really plan for that. Also keep in mind that you always have the ability to go back in on a modification. And I've had that happen several times where, one side decides that they're going to move, the exchange provisions no longer work, and therefore we have to go back in to request that the judge order a different schedule. Okay. In addition to that, there are what we call airline provisions that will sometimes be included in an order. Sometimes that works for kiddos, depending on their age, depending on the maturity level, so on and so forth. But you can draft an order and include these provisions in there to say that each one of you are ordered to get these kiddos on planes, to purchase airline tickets. If they miss flights, there's consequences for that. So keep in mind that if you guys are living, 500 miles away, that is always going to be an option as well. There's just very specific language that we have to make sure that we're including to accommodate that. What else, Floyd? Anything?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first, I just want to be clear that this is for parents that reside more than 100 miles. If you reside exactly 100 miles, you're on the video before, right? 100 miles or less is the video before. This is for people that reside more than 100 miles. And then one other thing we didn't touch on is the expanded elections. The only one that applies to this is for pickup, right? So the possessory conservator, rather than picking up at Friday at 6, can pick up Friday at the time school is released. Or like you said, if it's extended by holiday, then it would be a pickup on Thursday or whatever. And the extended by holiday provisions, just to be clear, that applies to whether you're doing the first, third, and fifth, or the alternate period of possession of 1 weekend per month. So I think you were clear on that, but you kind of talked about them together. So, and I think that's pretty much it. There's not much to weekend possession over 100 miles.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy. Yeah, I think that's it. So with that being said, I feel like we're missing something, but with that being said, like we always tell you, if you are having these types of issues, make sure that you're going to a local attorney and you are getting sound legal advice on how to deal with all these issues. I understand that when people are making these moves, sometimes it happens very quickly and it's very complicated. What you do not want to do is take these matters into your own hands and then end up with some sort of contempt action being filed or some sort of a modification being filed against you because you failed to comply with the order.